Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Moletrap here, bringing you another MSL Top 100 game. This is number 75. This is going to be a match between Kingdom and XellOs. And I started off kind of cherry-picking these games from the MSL Top 100 so I could get kind of a variety of matchups and different players and stuff. But at this point, I'm probably just going to be going through and doing them in order just for the sake of simplicity. And so we actually have two players here that we've seen before, so I'm not going to give them quite as much of an introduction because I've talked about them a lot before this. But we do have XellOs. Is going to be the purple Terran in the top right hand corner, and he's going to be on your right side of your screen, a little bit squished. It's kind of a weird scene there. And then, okay, so we're going to have Kingdom is the Protoss on the bottom left of the map, and he's also on the left side of your screen right now. Get an interesting little first person view situation here. Yeah, so again, if you missed the other games with these guys though, or just to review, so Kingdom, this game is being played in 2004, by the way, and so this is kind of the peak for both of these guys. I would say XellOs was most powerful maybe a year or two before this, so this is not necessarily the time when he was dominating. Kingdom never really had a time when he dominated, but he was really good around this time. So he was kind of, he's like I said in the other video, one of the three Protoss kings, right, of the first age of StarCraft. And anyway, so this should be a good match. This is the quarterfinals of the Spris MSL. You can see at the bottom it says Spris NBC Game Star League 4th. And so I think what that means is that, when a same sponsor sponsored the Star League multiple times, they would just call it, Pringles MSL2 or whatever. And this is the 4th Spris MSL. And yeah, so I'm curious to see what happens between these two guys. Pretty standard openers for both of them. It's interesting. Usually I just have so much to talk about beforehand that I'm realizing, like, whoa, usually I don't talk about the initial builds these days because there's just like so much backstory to give, and there's not really a ton of backstory to give in this situation. It is a quarterfinal match. But in any case, we do have pretty much standard openers. Looks like kind of one-based starters is probably the thing. We have XellOs putting his barracks over on the side there. Barracks in TVP is often just used to scout more than anything else. Sometimes you make some marines with it, but then you're going to just float it up and use it to kind of see what's going on in the map because you're going to want to switch to mech units pretty quickly. So kind of part of the reason why we see him building his barracks over off to the side there. And there we go, right into a factory pretty quickly. And it's interesting. I wonder how long they're going to keep this first-person view side-by-side thing going on. This is interesting. It was always like a rare treat, I remember, watching these older games when they would switch to first-person view because it was so difficult to get access to that. And, now we have streams. Like, you can watch Jadong's stream, I think. Like a lot of the best pro gamers are just streaming on Africa or Twitch, and you can just watch their first-person view. And so it's kind of interesting that now we have so much access to that, and you can kind of see how they play and just marvel at how quickly they move. Although, it is interesting to note that these players are not moving as fast as modern players would, the modern best players would. So, the kind of the arms race of APM was just beginning at this point in time, and so we do see them moving very fast, but not quite as fast as the best. The best gamers are going at over 300 APM the entire game in more recent games. I think Jelizerg was actually one of the first ones that I could be wrong about this. Don't quote me on this, but I believe Jelizerg was kind of one of the first ones that was kind of pushing the envelope with APM earlier on. But in any case, so I remember whenever I used to watch these old MSL games or whatever, when they'd switch to the first-person view, it was always like a little treat. You got to see what they were doing in their first person, and now there's a lot of access to it. So, but kind of cool to see them starting off their builds there, looking around, and it just gives you a little bit of an impression of all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes that you're not really paying attention to when you're just watching a VOD. They're having to switch back and forth between building buildings and assigning workers and also microing their scouting SCV or probe. In any case, so we do see that Kingdom has pushed out with a probe to, looks like, build an expansion. Yeah, he's got a probe set up there to build an expansion. He's pushing it with a few units. Looks like, oh, always snuck a probe around the back. Is he going to be able to get it in for a scout? No, he's not. Intercepted. And he does actually get close enough to see the command center hadn't been built yet. But the command center goes down right away after it, and I think maybe he saw the SCV there and is predicting there's going to be a command center, so he's going to build his Nexus. That might be why that probe was just chilling there for a minute. He might have been waiting to see if he could get a scout in and find out what XellOs was doing before he committed to his own course of action. Because if you go in there and you scout and you see it's a two-factor build, you need to put down a gateway, a second gateway, and you need to get defensive position, you know? Start getting tech units instead of investing in that Nexus. So in any case, we do have Kingdom setting up his front door nicely. This is a weird map where you've got a pretty significant little distance. I know that's a oxymoron, pretty significant little distance, but it's a larger distance than normal between your main ramp and your natural. So there's a lot of ground to cover. And then there's this kind of wide open choke point here that you can see right there with those Dragoons standing in the middle of. And there's the tank and then XellOs' choke point. There's kind of a wide open choke point there. It's really hard to hold. And so we have a nice, clever play by Kingdom building his extra gateway and pylon at that choke point to make it a smaller choke point, essentially, so that he can block with some Dragoons and can't have... Oh, for a second I thought that was... For years and years, I've always made that mistake. Because, you know, you watch one time... You watch like an old VOD of like boxers SCV rushes back in the early days in like 2001 or something like that, when he would rush yellow in the finals or what have you. And whenever you see a group of SCVs running out of the main, you're like, oh my god, it's a rush! But that's just like an instinctual reaction, but actually he's just Maynarding SCVs down to his second base so that he gets better mining efficiency. In any case, what was I talking about? I was talking about this choke point here. It's, you know, very common. You want to run vultures by and try and kill some probes if you can, and so blocking that possibility off is a good thing to do. So we do have an engineering bay. We have turrets going down in anticipation of a drop. That's a good spot. I mean, you can see the way this map is set up. If you're rallying your units to the front of your natural expansion, right there. So look on the mini-map here. It's kind of in the top middle, whereas his main base is kind of in the right and lower. So it's really, really vulnerable map position for drops, basically. And so we see him setting up turrets around the map because there's not really a good way to have your units in a position where they can protect your front door and protect the back from drops. So very smart by XellOs to get those turrets in the back. Also, doesn't know if there's going to be DT tech at some point, and he's can have the turrets around to detect those Dark Templar as well. And we do have a Citadel of a Dune. Do we see a Templar Archives yet? No, nothing along those lines. The Citadel is pretty standard. He wants to get the Zealot leg upgrades in order to be able to run those Zealots right up in amongst the tanks. And we're just seeing a macro game emerge here. It looks like we're going to see a nice long game. And we do have observers out for Kingdom, by the way, so, you know, the very initial mines are able to give the Terran map control very easily. Oh, that's cute. He's got the engineering bay over the turret. Just a cute little trick you can do to make sure that, like, if they do have air units, they can't target it. But also, if they're just, like, running in, they might not be able to see it. Right? You can see that it's kind of hidden behind there, so they won't have vision of that turret as easily. And that'll make it so that... you know, they might run their shuttle over that spot before they realize there's a turret there, and the shuttle will take extra hits and possibly even be killed. So, but anyways, I was saying that the mines offer a lot of map control for the Terran early on. You just make a few vultures. You know, 3 vultures is 9 mines, and that's enough to mine up your natural, like we saw XellOs do, and also to try and put mines around the map, just to kind of take control of different places. You haven't seen Terrans will put mines at the future Protoss expansion points to block the Nexus from being put down, or they'll actually put them beside it so that they don't block the Nexus, but they'll spot the probes running over the mine, so they'll know it's there without stopping it, which can sometimes be even more valuable. Stargate going down and a fleet beacon. Are we going to see a second Stargate? I mean, he's making the fleet beacon, so he's going for carriers, but often we see the fleet beacon and a second Stargate go down at the same time, so they can build double carriers. And the same reason why drops are really good on this map is the reason why carriers can be good on this map, right? If you look at the way the map is constructed, if you've got your Goliaths out in front protecting the front of your tanks to block from Zealots running in on, you know, now your third base. Looks like XellOs has taken his third base. Then your Goliaths can't be in the back of your base. It's such a long distance by ground between the natural. So, okay, yeah, there's the second Stargate. A little bit later than I would have expected, but he's going to be able to produce carriers out of 2 Stargates pretty easily. But, yeah, so it's just such a long distance for Goliaths to run, whereas it's a really quick distance by air for the carriers to just fly into the back, fly back out into the middle of the map. It's just a really interesting way that it's set up there. Anyway, the reason I was talking about all these mines is because now that we have plenty of observers and dragoons out, I just wanted to make that point. The Kingdom can now kind of take back map control, and it's up to the Terran to just kind of hunker down and build up forces until they can move out. And that's exactly what XellOs is doing. He's pushing out with a significant group here. This is actually really good timing because the carriers are not out yet. I mean, you need at least a few carriers, and they need to be full of interceptors for them to be useful. So this is a point in time where a lot of resources have invested by Kingdom into those carriers that have not paid off yet, and XellOs is using this timing to push out with a lot of tanks. He's got a lot of vultures as well. He does have the armories down, so he's going to be able to start following up with some Goliaths, but mostly it's vultures, which is a really good use of his minerals at this point. And Zealots streaming in here. It looks like only a few Zealots are going to get in close, but no, some are going to get up on top of the tanks, which is going to be really bad. The tanks in the back splashing the tanks in the front, and there's just not enough vultures to kill those Zealots quick enough. Ooh, that mine and a couple more tank hits are going to take out enough dragoons that it's going to stop Kingdom from pushing onto that position. I don't know if he knew that there was only 3 tanks and 3 vultures left, though. If he knew that that was all that was there, he might have continued, but he didn't know if there was another line of tanks behind it or what. Well, maybe he did know, actually. I don't know if an observer snuck behind there and saw. But this looks really good for Kingdom. Basically, that was the point of timing where XellOs had an opportunity to really push out and do some damage, where he had an advantage where, you know, think of the 1,000 minerals and gas that have been invested into Stargates and carriers that weren't built yet. And imagine if you had that many more Dragoons and Zealots or what have you, or even Templar. You know, it would have been a really big army difference there. So that was kind of an opportunity for XellOs to push out. Now, he has at least taken control of that sort of middle area. It's that bridge is a really nice spot. He can't really move past that bridge very easily, though. But, oh my gosh, foreigners watching StarCraft in Korea, amazing. Not that uncommon these days. But back in 2004, that was a rarity. They always show, I don't know about always, because there's a little bit of, you know, a bias that we only see the times when they do, but I remember, well, let me put it this way. The first time that I went to the MSL studio as a white person, they showed me on camera a couple times. So I just feel like, you know, it was kind of like a novelty back then. And it is still a novelty. Not as, you know, it's not a ton of foreigners going to see StarCraft and esports in Korea, but it's a lot more common. And of course, because esports has spread around the world much more than, it's not as big of a deal either. So, in any case, so now we do have, by the way, that situation where that engineering bay can protect that turret from being targeted, which might be possibly have an impact in things when those carriers are become a big deal. And here we have 3 carriers moving out, and he's waited until he has 3. I don't know if it's going to be a surprise because it's likely that XellOs has actually scouted it with Comsat Station, and yeah, he's got the Goliaths as well. So he's not really like pulling a fast one here or anything like that, but he's waited until there's a few of them because just one carrier with a few interceptors in it is not going to be that important. But this is interesting. He's attacking with these carriers before there's really enough Goliaths to deal with them. He's taken out the 3 Goliaths very easily, and now starting to go away on those tanks, and that is one of the strongest parts of the carriers, is that they can just pick off the tanks in the back and not worry about the vultures at all. Oh, he loses a carrier though. A little bit sloppy. Gets a Dragoon hit by a mine there as well. Didn't have to lose that carrier. He just kind of like went in after those tanks, and the Goliaths just ran right up. And crucially, there were still a bunch of mines there, so he actually couldn't just run the Dragoons in to save the carriers from the Goliaths. Otherwise, they would die, as we saw with those Dragoons taking mine hits there. So Kingdom needs to get a little bit more presence on the map. He needs to be a little bit more proactive about clearing out those mines. and running around and just kind of clearing the situation out, although I guess there's not really many mines left at this point. So, and we do have XellOs taking a 4th base, by the way, getting down a science facility. And so XellOs' economy is just really, really strong right now. I feel like this is the thing. Right now, XellOs has a pretty big advantage on paper because he's got even economy. He's got more economy coming up here than his opponent. And he's got map control. He's got control of the middle of the map. But now we're going to see the power of the carriers. The carriers are slow, but because they can fly, they are more mobile, and they're able to run over here. And look how protected they are, too. They can attack this command center, they can attack the barracks, and if any Goliaths come up, there's just a little space ridge there that they can just fly over and be completely safe. You know, unless he gets some wraiths or something like that, but wraiths are not the best move because you know, they're just weak in general to all the ground units, dragoons and what have you. And here's the crucial point, though. He says, okay, you're attacking my extra base. I'm going to push out. Those carriers are not with your army. You know, you don't have to kill the carriers. If you force the carriers to be in position that you want, then that's, oh my gosh, hold that thought. Zealots running in on front of the tanks. They only take out 1 tank. There's much more of a meat shield in front, or a metal shield rather. The Zealots all get taken out. Another wave of Zealots coming in from behind, though. The carriers have joined the battle as well. So there's 4 carriers raining down death on top of all these units. Are there going to be enough Goliaths to stop it? I don't think there is. He's able to target the carriers a little bit. The carriers are forced to fall back, but there's still a couple Zealots and dragoons on the ground. And the Zealots just going to work on the Goliaths. Oh my gosh, huge losses here for XellOs. That might have been the deciding factor of this game because now XellOs... excuse me. XellOs... I'm okay. XellOs forced to fall back. He has built another base in the top left to replace this one that's going to burn down on the middle right. We're going to have to see. This is crucial, though. This moment is when we're going to be able to see if he can resupply, if he can rebuild his army fast enough that he can hold off another wave. We're seeing that Kingdom is not choosing to push in. He's not trying to push across that ramp and go into the 3rd base. Instead, he's just using this time to harass with his carriers. He does have the map control now. He knows that Kingdom doesn't have the forces to do what he did before. Before, when he attacked with his carriers in one spot, XellOs moved out with the rest of his units to force an engagement in the middle, to force him to bring those carriers back to a position he could fight from instead of just getting free damage. Ooh. Random mine. Not even sure why it's there, but does some damage. Kind of cool. And that's, I mean, it's little stuff like that that XellOs needs, and that's why we're seeing these vultures run over here. Dragoons are going to stop him, though. Oof. Because that is exactly what XellOs needs to get back in this game right now, is he needs to get free damage, basically. He needs to be able to run vultures by and kill probes. He needs to be able to get free mine hits that kill off dragoons. Look at this. He only has a couple tanks. He is not in good shape right now, and frankly, I think if Kingdom knew exactly how good of a position he was in, he might have actually just run in and tried to finish things off. He might be more proactive about trying to kill off the top left base. Well, he might not know about the top left base yet, actually. So XellOs is able to rebuild some of his army here. He does have those 2 bridges in the middle, and that is crucial. That, you know, Terrans are good at holding choke points, and so if he can keep control of those bridges in the middle, it's possible he can hold out and just basically stop Kingdom from killing him for a little while, so he can rebuild his army. And, you know, it doesn't matter if the other person has more of an economy. If it's maxed army versus maxed army, then, you know, you can still win the game even with an inferior economy, basically, because then once you kill off the enemy force, you can go in and kill their economy, essentially. Now, obviously, having more of an economy usually does mean that you can then remax faster. That's kind of the key, is you get these... Why, you know, the big economy behind the big army matters, because once the armies kill each other off and everyone's reduced to a small army supply, then excuse me, then you can remax faster. You can get your units resupplied back out on the field faster than your opponent if you have more money. And so, anyway, lots of Goliaths here, but there is a sizable force of carriers built up. Look, he can just kind of ignore the Goliaths, run in, picks off a tank, and he does have units, you can see on the minimap, just south of those carriers. He's got units available to run up and protect if the Goliaths cross that bridge, to try and... Basically, he's trying to bait him. Look at these, he's just taking out the tanks. And he's baiting him. If he runs Goliaths over the bridge, to try and take out the Goliaths, they are dead. And XellOs knows that. He's holding back, just trying to protect these tanks, trying to get some damage done with the Goliaths against those interceptors, essentially, because he knows that if he runs across that bridge, the units are going to come down and crush him. He won't have the bridge as a defensive point to help him out, and he's just going to lose his army. And so, forced to lose a couple tanks just kind of randomly to those carriers. And here we have some vultures just trying to run in and do some damage. Not really going to happen. It's a good force of vultures. When you have, a dozen vultures, you can kill a Dragoon very easily, as you can see there. And he's just choosing to ignore it. Kingdom's like, who cares? I don't even have that base. In the meantime, I'm going to go and wreck your entire infrastructure. Supply depots? No, not going to happen. I'm going to take them all out. And I wouldn't be surprised if XellOs is supply blocked right now, because he's got a large army and he's just lost like 8 supply depots. That is huge. That is huge. He's not going to be able to build any more units. Goliath's popping out of those factories. He's just going through one by one. He's just shift-clicking them almost. Just taking out supply. He just took out like 50 supply worth of supply depots. That is insane. Actually, probably more. I'm looking at the little rubble piles on the ground there, and there was at least 12 of them, although 1 or 2 of them might have been armories as well. Now he's just rampaging across the middle here. The Goliaths have been, this is exactly what I was talking about. The Goliaths were drawn back to the main base to protect against the carriers, and now they're not in position to protect against the middle attack as well, and Kingdom is just playing this game perfectly. I'm just so impressed by Kingdom's play here. He's utilizing every advantage he has in the map to play this perfectly, and just was able to barely hold off. Like I said, there was that one point where he hadn't gotten his carriers going yet, and XellOs pushed down through the middle of the map, and he was able to defend it. He was able to defend it once XellOs pushed over that bridge. He waited for him to come across the bridge and then dealt with it. And actually, is he going to make a mistake here and go across the bridge himself? No, he's not. Okay, that would have been suicide. That would have been throwing away his huge lead by crossing that bridge and losing his ground army. But instead, he's just, oh, and a couple carriers. Oh, he does lose one crossing across the middle to join the main force. But it looks like XellOs knows that he has one chance alone, as that is to counter push. And I think it's too late for him to draw the carriers back, because he's already lost his entire infrastructure. He's lost his entire main base to those carriers. So it's all in for this push. He has to go in and basically sink. He has to sink Kingdom with this one push, or he is out of this game. He can't rebuild. It's too late to try and rebuild everything in there. He's just got to try and push out. And crucially, it looks like Kingdom is drawing his carriers back. If he fights with a unified force, no, he's not. He's sending the carriers back up to the main. I don't know if this is the right move, because right now XellOs has lost so much that if Kingdom just fights with a unified force with all of his carriers and his ground units at the same time, there's no way he loses. And well, I guess he's instead going back after the main, and XellOs is being drawn back again with those Goliaths, which there are just so few of them left. He's now picking off Goliaths instead of tanks. I say so few. Obviously, there's a lot of them, but compared to the amount of carriers, when you have one Goliath for every carrier, it's not a good situation. He's continuing to have this slow push that just keeps getting distracted back and forth, and I think in a rare show of a slight amount of emotion, we saw on XellOs' face there that he knew what the situation was. XellOs is a very stoic guy, but we saw the disappointment there. So, well done by Kingdom. Absolutely amazing play. Love to see it. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed that game. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon with some more MSL Top 100 action, and like I said, maybe some other VODs from other tournaments coming up hopefully soon as well. Alright, thanks for watching.